Hey everybody, it's Ben. This is going to be part one of my graphic novel slash trade paperback collection. Not sure just yet how many parts this is going to be, but this first part in particular is going to be nothing except every single independent comic that I have. So without further ado, let's get into it. First up, we have Wanted by Mark Millar and J.G. Jones. This is the 6-issue limited series, which was published by Top Cow and Image Comics. A lot of people either really like this or they really hate it. As you can see, this is the movie edition, which was the basis for the 2008 Wanted film with Angelina Jolie, James McAvoy, and Morgan Freeman. Now, this is one of the first graphic novels I ever bought, and I personally really like this, and I prefer it to the movie, whereas other people might be of the polar opposite opinion. Next up, we have a honourable mentions, and that is David Liss's The Spider by Dynamite. If you're a fan of the pulp era heroes like Green Hornet, The Shadow, Doc Savage, or Richard Wentworth, The Spider, I highly recommend you check out The Spider from Dynamite. It's currently up to issue 16 according to Dynamite's website, but like I said, if you're a fan of David Liss, if you're a fan of pulp heroes or independent comics publishers like Dynamite, then I highly recommend the series, as I really don't want the series to go anywhere, as it's just been fantastic, especially the first arc of the first 6 issues. Next up, we have the only IDW series in my possession at the moment, and that is Joe Hill's Lock and Key. This is the first volume, Welcome to Lovecraft. Really fantastic series, and for those of you who don't know, Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King, and there's definitely elements of his old man in his writing, from the supernatural aspects to the horror aspects, and this series is just absolutely fantastic. And if you're a fan of Joe Hill, again, indie comic publishers or supernatural horror with a murder twist, then I highly recommend Lock and Key. So that was volume 1, Welcome to Lovecraft. This is volume 2, Head Games. I only have the first 2 volumes at the moment, of which there are currently 5 volumes out so far. 5 in hardcover, 4 in trade paperback form. Next up, we have a up until recently new to me publisher, and that is Valiant. And I have to give a shout out and a thank you to Mr. James Donnelly and Mark MAW001 for putting me onto this publisher and all of these series, because they've just been absolutely stellar reads thus far. This is Fred Van Lante's Archer and Armstrong, basically a buddy comedy slash action adventure story with just fantastic artwork, fantastic writing. There's generally laugh out loud humor. If you're a fan of like the Uncharted video game series or Indiana Jones, like those old kind of pulpy action adventures, then I definitely recommend Archer and Armstrong. Next up is Dwayne Straczynski's Bloodshot. This is basically the Terminator with amnesia, pretty much. This basically follows the title of character Bloodshot as he tries to figure out if any of the false memories that he has in his head are real, and he's also trying to stop the agency that created him, which is Project Rising Spirit. Like I said, if you're a fan of the premise, which is the Terminator with amnesia, then I definitely recommend Bloodshot. That was volume 1, setting the world on fire, and Archer and Armstrong was the Michelangelo Code. Next up, we have probably my favourite of the Valiant series that I've read thus far, and that is Harbinger, volume 1, Omega Rising. This is basically X-Men meets Heroes meets real world, set in the real world, essentially. This is just basically you meet up with Peter Peter Stanchek, and he's a Omega level power psionic. He can basically, he's a telekinetic. He can move things with his mind. He's also a telepath as well, and it's just basically following him as he gets inducted into the Harbinger Foundation, which is basically supposedly a training school for any and all untrained psiots, or basically humans with superpowers. But not everything is as it seems, and there's just the writing in this by Joshua Dysart is absolutely fantastic, and the artwork by Carrie Evans is equally on par. I've already reviewed the Harbinger trades on my channel, and the Spider as well. So if anybody's interested, if you want more in-depth thoughts on what I think of these trades so far, by all means feel free to check out those reviews. And finally, for Valiant, we have Robert Venditti's Exo Manowar. This is just basically an epic space opera drama with basically one man fighting against a evil race of aliens known as the Vine. This is just a fantastic series, as with the rest of the Valiant books that I've read thus far. Again, I've also reviewed the Exo Manowar volumes as well. This is volume 2, Enter Ninjak, which collects issues 5 through 8 of the series. Sorry I'm whizzing through these a bit quick, guys. I just don't want this video to run too long. Next up, we have Bedlam Volume 1. This is written by Nick Spencer, and we now move on to the Image trade paperbacks that I have. Absolutely fantastic series. It's basically a murder mystery with basically a former criminal overlord and a former I can't think of the right word, homicidal maniac, known as Matter Red, which basically Dan and Dale of Pad's Camera Action or Comic Book Show basically described this series as Silence of the Lambs, but without Hannibal Lecter. It's the Joker instead. And just the writing in this by Nick Spencer and the artwork by Riley Rossmo, who unfortunately is only on for the first arc of the first 6 issues, is absolutely fantastic. I will do a review of this volume fairly soon, as I have some notes written down and I've just recently read it, so that's a review you can look forward to. Next up, we have John Layman and Rob Guillory's Chew. This is Volume 1. Volume 2. Volume 3. Volume 4. Volume 5. And finally Volume 6. Now this series follows the titular character of Tony Chu, who is a symbiopath, which basically means anything he takes a bite out of, he can get psychic impressions of basically how that product was killed. So if he takes a bite out of a steak, he can tell how the animal was killed and harvested and whatnot. If he takes a bite out of an apple, he can tell how it was grown and what pesticides were used on it. Basically, the premise for this series is in a world where chicken is outlawed, and the most powerful law enforcement agency, known as the FDA, or the Food, Drugs and Alcohol Agency, I believe, basically is essentially a police force which tracks down any and all food-related crimes in this version of America. And Tony Chu joins up with the FDA and it basically follows him as he solves any and all food-related crimes, essentially. So it's kind of a cop drama with basically just a really cool twist and a really cool and unique premise. Yeah, 2 is great. It's a really original series with a really original premise, and it's just absolutely fantastic and highly recommended. Next up, we have one of my favorite writers right now, and that is Scott Snyder. And this is the trade of his 7-issue limited series, Severed, which is basically a pre-1920s period piece with essentially a road trip horror story, essentially. If you've read anything by Scott Snyder, whether it's his Batman stuff, his Swamp Thing, or American Vampire, you'll know that the guy knows how to write a really terrifying, harrowing, but at the same time a really interesting and compelling story where it's just basically anything the guy writes is an absolute page turner, and it's absolutely fantastic. I'm going to say something that I've never actually said about any comics author, but Scott Snyder actually manages to creep me out a lot. Especially with the scene in one of the early issues of Swamp Thing. And I haven't got around to reading Severed as of yet, but I will do eventually, and I will put a review up for you guys. And finally, a series that really needs no introduction because everybody knows how brilliant and how fantastic it is. It's written by Brian K. Vaughan of Why the Last Man, Ex Machina, Runaways, The Private Eye, Doctor Strange, The Oath, and it's, of course, Saga. This is Volume 1, which collects the first 6 issues. Absolutely fantastic series. If you're a fan of Brian K. Vaughan, Image, or a sci-fi fantasy story, this has been pitched by a lot of people as Romeo and Juliet meets Game of Thrones meets meets a epic space odyssey, essentially. So that's Volume 1, and here's Volume 2, which I've yet to get around to reading because I'm going to reread Volume 1 and then jump straight into Volume 2 and review Volume 2 for you guys, as I've already reviewed the first volume. Bit of a mark on the cover there, just got rid of. Next up, we have what I refer to as basically the huge editions that I have in my collection, again from Image, and this is The Darkness, which is basically the Compendium version. This is Volume 1, which collects The Darkness Volume 1 preview 0.5 all the way up to issue 40, Tales of the Darkness 0.5 to 4, Witchblade and the Darkness issue 0.5, and The Darkness Volume 2 issue 1, and The Darkness Wanted Dead one-shot. And as you can probably tell from the amount of trouble I'm having holding up this book, which there's another one of these and I'll show you in a second, this thing is a huge tome and it's over 1,000 pages. It's heavy and it's awesome. The first 20 issues of this series are written by a favourite comic author of mine, and that is Garth Ennis. Basically, if any of you are familiar with the Darkness video game, then I'm going to put this one down a second. Then that was basically the Darkness comic series was the source material for the video game. Or video games, I should say, because there's actually the Darkness 1 and the Darkness 2. This is the Compendium Volume 2, which collects the Darkness issues 41 through 89, the Darkness Lord Brock's Hand, the Darkness Shadow and Flame, and the Darkness Butcher. Again, it's another 1,000 pages worth of basically a mafia story with a supernatural twist. And by a supernatural twist, I mean huge snake-like demons which grow out of a guy's shoulders and little mini gremlin slash demon dudes who are hilarious. Or the dark, or Jackie Estacado, or the Darkness's minions, if you will. Ooh. Woo. Never mind going to the gym. Lifting these up will give you a workout. Staying with Image, we have Fatale, Book 1, Death Chase Me, which is written by Ed Brubaker and illustrated by Sean Phillips. You may know these two gentlemen from other works such as Criminal, Incognito, Sleeper, I believe, if there's anything else I'm missing, I'm not sure. Just looking at the back here. Nope, I think that's it for collaborations between these two. Yeah, Criminal, Sleeper, Incognito, and Fatale. So this is the first 5 issues. This is basically a crime noir story with basically H.P. Lovecraft Cthulhian monsters, essentially. This is just a fantastic series. I've yet to pick up volume 2 or 3, but I will pick up the rest of the volumes eventually, purely for money reasons, but that's Fatale. Next up, we have basically what amounts to a alternate World War II history series with a mad science fiction twist. This is the Manhattan Project, which is written by Jonathan Hickman and illustrated by Nick Pitarra. Basically, you have a bunch of real-life scientists involved in this. You have Albert Einstein, you have both Joseph and Robert Oppenheimer. I'm not sure which of the two gentlemen. They might have both been real-life people. I know one of them was. I'm not sure which. You also have a who else do we have? We have Wernher von Braun. We have Richard Feynman, or Feynman, I think. Well, not really that great with names. And the icing on the cake is President Truman, but we also have Franklin D. Roosevelt as a artificial intelligence. This series is just crazy, wacky sci-fi ideas with, like I said, alternate World War II history, with aliens and killer Japanese cyborgs or robots. Yeah, this is just a great series, and if you're a fan of mad, crazy science fiction with a alternate World War II history twist, highly recommend Jonathan Hickman's The Manhattan Projects. Briefly going back to Nick Spencer, we have Morning Glories, Volume 1, which collects the first 6 issues. It basically follows these 6 kids as we see on the front cover. So we have, oh boy, it's been a while since I read this. We have Hunter, I can't remember the blonde girl's name. We have Hunter, Jade, Ike, Zoe, Jun, and it's really bugging me that I can't remember the blonde chick's name. We have Ike, who's basically a self-serving, looking out for number one kind of a guy. You will literally have, you'll have some idea of what's going on in this series. You'll have a great idea of what's going on with the characters, and Nick Spencer just did a fantastic job of giving each of these 6 individual characters that we follow within the Morning Glories Academy, which is a very prestigious prep school, which not everything is as it seems, and it's okay that you don't know where the story is going, because Nick Spencer just does a fantastic job of fleshing out each of these different characters and making it more of a character-driven story that you find yourself wanting to go back to and reread on a regular basis. I have, like I said, this is volume 1. Oops, let's try and keep those from falling. And I have volume 2, which collects issues 7 through 12. I haven't got around to reading this volume yet. I know there are currently 4 volumes in total of the Morning Glory series out, so I need to pick up 3 and 4 eventually, and start reading the series and reviewing it. I know Mr. Hex, Cameron, I know he recently reviewed the first volume. Next up, again and finally for Image, we have Joshua Hale Fialkov and Brent Peoples' The Last of the Greats. This is a really fantastic 5-issue miniseries which basically follows The Last of the Greats, which is basically a superhero who essentially rules the world. And again, not everything is as it seems. There's some really horrific and very morally questionable things that The Last of the Greats does in this. The first of which is with a young kid over an ocean, and that's all I'm going to say. And there's also another scene in this which I don't want to go into, as I want you guys to pick this up and read it. This could have been there could have been a sequel to this series, which was The Return of the Greats, I believe. Yeah, The Return of the Greats, but unfortunately that was dependent upon how well the trade sold, and unfortunately due to underwhelming sales numbers, we didn't get The Return of the Greats. But this is a fantastic series, and Joshua Hale Fialkov, who until recently was a new to me comic author, along with his short-lived, albeit again cancelled due to poor sales, iVampire series, which I also highly recommend, and I'll go into more detail about that in my DC parts of my collection soon. So anyway, Last of the Greats. And finally, moving over to Dark Horse, we have BPRD Volume 9, 1946, which was sent to me very graciously by my very good friend and fellow YouTuber Gary Onesie Angelique. This is co-written by Mike Mignola, who is the creator of both the BPRD and Hellboy universes, respectively, and it's also co-written with Joshua Dysart of Harbinger over at Valiant. Next up, we have Eric Powell's The Goon. This is written and illustrated by Eric Powell. This is basically a buddy comedy which follows the titular character of the Goon and his best friend and sidekick Frankie, whose favorite catchphrase is "knife to the eye." And I'll leave it up to you guys to basically pick this series up and read it. This is a really cool series because it's a mashup of different genres. You have its equal parts supernatural horror story with mobster or mafia story threads. There's a western tale in this first volume. There's a Father Christmas story in this first volume. It's basically a mashup of all these different genres, and it's a really great series written and illustrated by Eric Powell. If anybody's interested, I've reviewed the first 3 volumes of this on my channel, and the original covers alone by Eric Powell are absolutely fantastic. As you can see from the cover, this is Volume 1, Nothing But Misery. Volume 2, My Murderous Childhood. Volume 3, Heaps of Ruination, which has a guest appearance by Hellboy of Hellboy and BPRD fame in this 3rd volume. We have Volume 4, which is Virtue and the Grim Consequences Thereof. Again, another fantastic volume of this series. And finally, the most the volume that I have currently of this series is volume 5, and that is Wicked Inclinations. Again, another fantastic volume of this series. I will review volumes 4 and 5 at some point, and I'll also be picking up the rest of this series as well when money permits. And finally, the last of my independents and the only hardcover that I have, which is what you were supposed to do to a hardcover apparently. So there we are. This is Blacksad, which is written by Juan Diaz Canales and illustrated by Juanejo Gorenido. Sorry. It's Guarnido. I cannot pronounce that name properly. This is basically a it's a crime noir series which follows the title character of John Blacksad, who is a talking tabby cat. Basically, the rules of this universe dictate that the animal form that you take on basically matches up your personality. So John Blacksad, as you can see on the back of this hardcover, is a hard-boiled private investigator. Basically, Sam Spade from Humphrey Bogart's The Maltese Falcon, essentially. And so you have all of the police officers in the Blacksad universe are dogs. So you have German Shepherds. You have the criminal element is basically sort of lizards and snakes and just all of the kind of creepy kind of, you know, more what is the word, the more nastier side of the animal kingdom then, if you will. So basically, if you're a fan of crime noir stories, then I highly recommend Blacksad. Again, I haven't got around to reading this yet, but I will do at some point. I know there's another volume of this called A Silent Hell, which I know another good friend and fellow YouTuber, Ben, Mr. Fix-It Smash, he absolutely swears by Blacksad, and also another good friend and fellow YouTuber, Geru42 or Rue. He also swears by independent books like Blacksad as well. And that concludes part 1 of my graphic novel collection, guys. Sorry this one was a little bit longer than normal. I tried to sort of blaze through everything a bit quick, like I said, because I don't want this video to run too long. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. As always, feel free to leave a comment below in the comment section. But as I always say, if you thumbs down the video, please don't hesitate to tell me why in the comment section below, or send me a private message. If you're new to my channel and you'd like to see more of my videos, please feel free to subscribe. And until next time, this is Scambit896 signing off, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, guys.